Good morning. Today, in another installment of MD Americas, we are so happy and proud to host Dr. Mike Rizzo, the co founder and CEO of PCS Pharmacare, which is a very interesting company that provides medications at advantageous cost to insurance companies and to patients. Before we dive into the nuts and bolts of the business, pharmaceutical cost and cost containment, I'd like to ask you, Mike, to introduce yourself to our audience. Tell us a little bit about who is Mike Rizzo, where does he come from, how did he get here?
Hi, good morning. Thank you for inviting me to your show. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here sharing this time with you. Well, I originally come from Cuba. I came here when I was 20 years old. And when I came to the US, I had just finished school in Cuba where I was trained to be a pharmaceutical technologist. What that is a group of teenagers basically that were part of a program that Cuba had to work in the industry making manufacturing medications. So I was very lucky to be able to come to the US right after I finished school and came here. And then when I came here, I found myself in this little confusion because the pharmacists in the United States are more of a clinician. They don't train to be to work in a manufacturing plant. They're trained to work hand in hand with the doctors. So basically the program is a doctorate degree in pharmacology, and so I signed up for it thinking that was going to be a continuation of what I did in Cuba. Ended up being a totally different thing. And I finished school here at Nova Southeastern University in 2005. I have been practicing most of my career in what is oncology, pharmacology, and a specialty medications. And that's in essence what I've been done for the part of the doctor of pharmacy perspective.
From what I hear is Cuba, as well as other countries, have made it a political goal not to be held hostage, so to speak, to pharmaceutical patents. They don't respect the intellectual property because they say, we are broke, we can't pay for that, but our people need it. As a pharmaceutical, and particularly as someone who comes from another culture that view things politico-socially, what is your view about this issue? Should countries that can afford the cost of pharmaceuticals be pirating this, or should they reach special agreements with the manufacturers and then produce it?
To answer your question about whether one thing it's ethically or morally correct or the other one, it depends. You have to look at the argument. We have to understand the statistics behind getting one medication approved. For a molecule to actually become a candidate to be a drug, the chances are like 1 in 1,000. So the amount of money that it takes to do a clinical trial, the effort, and then once you get that, finally, let's say you have a drug, right? You have 10 years to get that return on the investment and make enough money to continue researching the next one and the next one. So that's what's established. So if you ask me, is that fair? You put all that effort. I think it is. Meantime, you have, if you divide it, the advanced world, developed world, and then the rest, well, the majority of the people also have all these conditions and they need this medication. So normally there are ways in which the industry and the manufacturer also has an interest in their product being used in this markets as well. But oftentimes producing it, let's say if you just come out with a medication or drug and you're going to manufacture in the United States, it's probably not cost effective to produce it there and sell it to, let's say, in Asia, right? So then that's when you start having all this agreements with contract manufacturing, and you give them the patent and you give them the know-how, and you saw it now with the vaccines. And so we proved that this is doable. We can have both worlds coexisting. It is difficult, and there are many realities to face, but it could happen. I don't think that just pirating, to use your word, it's justifiable.
Pharmaceuticals represent a substantial percent of healthcare budgets. The accessibility to healthcare is really affected by and influenced by the cost of medications. In some countries, access to medications is limited because of the cost. My question to you is, obviously, you do not dictate the rules of the market, but your company has a role in the marketplace. What is the mission of PCS? What is PCS doing to make medication more accessible and the challenge of cost lower?
That's a very good question, and absolutely correct. There's a total disconnect between the way that we practice medicine, we prescribe, dispense medications in the U.S. and, let's say, the rest of Latin America. So to your point, what happens with sophisticated or with new therapies is that in that basket that you're saying, when the governments get together, they usually do not include these medications. So basically, the doctor that went to the literature and understood that there's a newly medication approved for this condition and wants to try it for this one patient, the patient then has to go through a whole process, depending on the country, that is very, very convoluted to be able to obtain that medication. Now, in our case, as Pharm Care Services, that's where we come in and we facilitate that for those patients. Let's just assume that this patient is a patient of an IPMI, of an International Private Medical Insurance that we work with. We become that entity between the insurance, the patient, the physician in that country, to be able to make sure that that therapy is available for that patient in that country.
So in other words, let's say there is a patient, your company specializes in high cost medications. Let's say specifically cancer, oncological medication. So there is a patient in Buenos Aires. They need access to a certain medication that, because of local bureaucracy, is not yet registered, not yet available. How do you come in to the picture with their insurer and being the bridge to availability and legal consumption of the medication?
Excellent. Yes, access to the medication, and that's a very good question, is only part of the equation, okay? So the medication is a continuation of the diagnosis, and it's part of a plan to be able to get this patient healthier. So getting access to the medication is an important part of it, okay? Because getting access to the medication in a way that we can be certain that that medication is what the medication is, because that's another problem that we have in Latin America that we'll get to that. So let's assume we have access to that medication. Sometimes the access is in the local market. Sometimes it's in the country next to it. There are distribution rules for this medication. We have deals with manufacturers that allow us to be the only distributors for these markets in Latin America, because we do it in a controlled way. So access is part of it, but that's just not all of it. You have to apply or infuse, if it's a medication is to be infused, this medication properly in a certain way. Sometimes you have other things that are not just the medication that you need to infuse it. We manage all of that to make sure that not just the medication, but all the know-how around this medication to be able to obtain the outcome that is needed for this medication.
Let's say a clinic a clinic defined as a private hospital, a government hospital, or just a private physician would like to dispense a certain medication, which means they want to make it available to their patients or to other patients, they will call your company, PCS, and then you will provide them with a whole implementation plan in which supplying the medication is part of the plan.
That is correct. And I give you one example, which with the group that we are working right now. It's what would be considered in the U.S. a mixture between a health plan and a health system. They have it more combined in a different kind of like a version of that. And this is a Neurowide, for example. So we're working with this large group, and we have been contracted to manage their cost of medications. So the first thing that we do, your point, is get there and analyze what the problem is, okay? And then we design a plan specifically to address that one problem. And we could be able to show them how to save money, not necessarily the problem is with the access to the medication.
Are you at the liberty of sharing with the audience, on average, what are the savings when a program like yours is implemented compared to how they did business before?
Well, the average is about 20%. We go from 10 to 30, depending on how much we get involved with it. You know, if we have full range and we add and we put all the tools in place, we could get as much as 30%. But the average is 20%.
The last point I like to touch on, because we spoke about that before the program, I like the program that you have with GPs, with general practitioners, particularly in the Caribbean, where access is everything. Trust in that small clinic is everything. You know, people come from very traditional backgrounds in isolated environment where cost is not always the issue. It's accessibility to a trusted provider is. Share with us the program where you actually set up a mini day hospital.
Well, the problem with the Caribbean is that it's the way I look at it for the big manufacturers, for big pharma, it's like almost like an abandoned market. Everything gets there after everybody else. You know, they last in line. That's why accessibility to medications is a problem. So, and then the same goes for everything, you know, for the insumos, you know, all the stuff that you need to infuse the medications is a problem sometimes to source it. The only way that we can really help is when we partner with somebody over there and open some sort of, like they call it, day hospitals over there, you know, some sort of place where we can centralize a lot of this effort. You know, that's what we are doing in the Caribbean.
Well, Mike, I want to thank you for your time and energy, which is infectious. You have made international pharmaceutical to me a lot clearer. I want to commend you and congratulate you on that innovative approach you are taking, that humanitarian mission that drives you, and to invite you for a cup of coffee one day after this interview, because this will be distributed. It will be available on YouTube. It will be available on LinkedIn, and I surely hope that you will be reached by the industry, by physicians, and by patients, that you can simply make their lives a lot easier and healthier. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Anytime.
Okay.